God bless America. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special Saturday edition of the Talk Radio Protege program. I am glad that you have decided to join me today. I know I usually tell people to unplug on the weekend, but there were two big things that happened late yesterday that I didn't talk about, and I want to talk about them now. This just popped up on my briefing feed. If you don't know what briefing is, it's a little news app that's on the Samsung phones. Occasionally stuff pops up, and in this case it let me know about Ireland voting to legalize abortion, and the way that they had to do it was they had to repeal an amendment in the Ireland Constitution that recognizes the right of all humans, including the unborn, to life. So, you know that I have a, what's the phrase I want to use here? I've got a chip on my shoulder when it comes to abortion. I'd like to think that the science is clear on this, but what the debate has not been settled. That's not a sentence. The part of the debate that has not been settled is whether or not it's moral to terminate a life just because it hasn't reached a certain point in that life. And somebody tell me if I understand this wrong, but the way I understand it is the Chinese, or maybe it's just all of East Asia, I think it's China, has it right when it comes to the life inside the womb. When you're born in China, you're not 0 years old. You are 1 year old, if I understand this correctly. They acknowledge that you are alive inside your mother's womb. Perhaps it would be useful to explain this with marsupials. If you don't know what a marsupial is, it's pretty simple. A marsupial gives birth to young that are then gestated in an external uterus. I think I used all the right words there. So birds and reptiles, they gestate their young in eggs, right? And mammals gestate their young inside an internal uterus. When a mammal is born, it is generally functional, right? That might be the right way to describe it. That might not. But when marsupials are born as a fetus. To use words that we would describe, marsupials give birth to a fetus, and then they gestate that fetus in an external uterus. So the thing is alive, even though it's still a fetus. The way that mammals are born, they do most of their development in an internal fetus. They're born, I've explained this already. So the question in my mind, given the rabbit trail that we're running down at the moment, the question in my mind is, if humans were marsupials, would we consider a born fetus to be a human life? And if the answer is no, and feminazis and abortion mongers must answer no, but the rest of humanity must answer yes, because it's born outside of the womb, it's now alive, right? That's the argument that most people use. Once it's outside the womb, it's a human life. Is that not the argument that the feminazi makes also? That once it's outside the womb, it's a human life, but until then, it's not alive. So if humans were marsupials, would the fetus born and then gestated in an external uterus be a life? And in order for the abortionist to justify abortion at that point, would have to say no, because they want to be able to, it's part of the sexual revolution, the concept of sex without consequences, that you shouldn't have to take care of shouldn't have to live through the consequences of your what's the word I'm looking for? whatever there's a word that I can't think of right now, but you're frivolous. There's one way to describe it. You're frivolous sex. It's the idea that you're not responsible for your own actions. In fact, it's society's fault that you got pregnant. So society should have to bend over and let you abort this baby. Now, I feel like I've said some of this argument in previous videos. So you can go back and watch that. I'll briefly restate my position on the thing here. Science has determined that at the moment of fertilization, a fertilized egg has a unique DNA strand from the mother and the father, right? You can determine descendancy, but it's no longer the DNA of the fertilized egg is no longer a perfect match to either the father or the mother. It's its own unique thing. And in a secular argument, a unique DNA strand is a unique life, is it not? If you want to get spiritual with this, you can. If you want to get spiritual with this, the Christianity and Judaism, I believe, both teach that the life inside of the womb is alive, is unique, is infinitely valuable. Spiritually speaking, in terms of Christianity and Judeo-Christianity, life is infinitely valuable. Therefore, the life inside of the womb is infinitely valuable. But if you don't want to get spiritual with this, you want to go the secular argument, fine. A life is worthy of all of the rights that we convey on humanity, is it not? Therefore, any unique life is worthy of all of the rights that we convey upon humanity, that we recognize humanity as having. Therefore, a unique DNA strand, whether it's inside or outside of the womb, is deserving of all of the rights that we recognize all of humanity as having. Therefore, an unborn baby, an unimplanted egg, a fertilized unimplanted egg is now a unique life within the womb. Now, the enforcement of that right to life gets a little fuzzy because of things like the morning after pill, and I'm not sure exactly how the morning after pill functions. If I understand it correctly, the morning after pill, induces a menstruation cycle. I think I've got that I think I understand that correctly. So the enforcement gets a little fuzzy there. Are you inducing the menstruation of a fertilized or an unfertilized egg? So maybe that's a discussion for another time. We can get into that later. I don't want to get too bogged down here, and I think I've already started. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next topic. From the Independent, Tommy Robinson is arrested for breaching the peace outside court during a grooming trial. Now, if you don't know who Tommy Robinson is, Tommy Robinson wrote a book called Public Enemy No. 1. He's an English citizen, a Brit for short. He talks a lot against radical and, the way he terms it, medieval 7th century Islam. He says he has no problem with Muslims. He has a problem with, again, the way he puts it, medieval 7th century Islam. He's been arrested once already on you might call it frivolous financial charges and put in prison. While he was in prison, he was beaten by Muslim prisoners there because of what he says about Islam. Now, it's been several years. I want to say it's been 10 years, but maybe it hasn't been that long. It's been a long time since Tommy Robinson went to jail, and the problem has only gotten worse. There's a couple of videos that I've referenced to on my channel in my liked videos playlist that you might go check out. I will give you a mild language warning. The guys that do the videos that I've liked are use language in some of their videos. I don't believe they use language in either of the videos that will be in the liked list. I try to keep language out of the videos in the liked list, but I think this is a issue that's very important to talk about, too important to allow something like that to stand between you and the information that you need to hear. So, the problem with Muslim gangs in English prisons has gotten much, much worse since Tommy Robinson was there last. So a lot of people are calling this a death sentence, that he will be in prison for 11 or so months. But what I think is important to recognize is that there's a de facto police state in the UK right now. Because you go and watch one of the videos that I'll have linked to via the like is very disturbing. I'll describe the events for you briefly if you don't want to go watch that. But a woman was questioning a police officer about why Muslims were allowed to pray in an area that the UK government has marked off and said no one is allowed to pray here. I don't know why that is the case, but it's the case. There's a place in England where no one is allowed to pray except for Muslims. And the woman makes she doesn't make a scene. She asks the officer why it is the case that the Muslims are allowed to pray and no one else is. And a scene arises because several other men who, maybe I'm racist, look like they might come from the Middle East, surround her. She's surrounded by a crowd and is forced to talk to all these other people. She talks to the police officer for a little while longer, and he says, go talk to the sergeant. So she talks to the sergeant, again asking these questions, and he refuses to answer her questions. He says, why don't you come down to the station with me? She doesn't go to the station. But days later, or I'm not exactly sure how much time goes by, police officers come to her door and demand that she open her door, threaten to break the door down if she doesn't open the door, and then as soon as she opens the door, they arrest her and haul her off. What was her crime? Again, disturbing the peace. What did Tommy Robinson and this woman do to disturb the peace? They pointed out that people of a specific background were breaking the law. That is the crime, or that is the actions that these two individuals did that has been criminalized now via precedent by the English government. And I want to ask you to think back. It might be difficult for some of you younger folks, but think to places in the world where people are thrown in jail for frivolous crimes, and it's called disturbing the peace. You might remember a man by the name of Otto Warmbier, who was arrested in North Korea for, quote-unquote, stealing a banner. He was thrown into prison, and when he finally made it back to the U.S., he succumbed to injuries sustained while he was detained in North Korea. They tortured him because he took a banner off of a freaking wall and called it disturbing the peace. Ladies and gentlemen, the UK is on the tracks, one car behind North Korea at this point, because they decided they needed to arrest someone, two people, for pointing out that crimes were being committed and ignored by the police by a specific segment, discrete segment of UK society. They're going to be thrown in jail. They're going to be thrown in jail along with a lot of other of the criminal element that is extremely violent, that controls the prison systems in the UK. And I pray to God that they're going to make it out alive. That's going to do it for this video. I would like to say I hope that you enjoyed, but how can you enjoy a topic like this? I enjoy making these videos, but I don't enjoy the fact that these topics are happening. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you want to see more content like this in the future. If you enjoy the special Saturday editions, let me know, and I might make them part of the routine. Until next time, good night, and God bless.